This program, as we said, is the Caramoo. We want to welcome all of you listening, particularly those of you that are listening at www.900am, WURD.com, and of course, all of the family that are listening on the radio. We're honored and delighted to have a friend of ours who has been a friend of this broadcast, and I would say this station, for a very long time. His name is Mike Dennis, sometimes called Mike D. He is the creator, CEO, president of Reelblack.com. He is, in our first segment, going to be talking about some amazing documentary films and some other work that he is doing in Philadelphia and throughout the Delaware Valley to educate and entertain you about African Americans in the cinema. And I would argue that nobody in the country does it any better or close to what Mike D does. So he's in our first segment. Mike is also in our second segment as we talk about the Black Power Mixtape. There's no better person to have in the room on the mic than Mike Dennis to discuss that with us. And we'll be pulling in some folks from Atlanta from the National Black Arts Festival, 2 additional folks that will critique the film with us. And we promise we will have a lively conversation. And because of Mike Dennis, I've seen the film. I'm now a big Willie film critic because of Mike Dennis. So I've seen it, I've screened it, and we're going to have a good dialogue about that. In slice number 3 of the broadcast, we have been providing a series of programs, if you've been following us, on Troy Davis. We're attempting to keep the spotlight where it belongs on his death, transition, execution, if you will. We are calling this segment, in part 3, Troy Davis Going Home Service, The Struggle Continues. We will have calling us Bishop James G. Rogers, who is the senior pastor who was courageous, as far as I'm concerned, at the Jonesville Baptist Church of Savannah. He provided the space for the Going Home Service of Troy Davis, and we first want to thank him for that, as we will do later, and we want to talk about that service. In that segment as well, we will be honored to have Mr. Stephen Deere, who was an honorary pallbearer at the ceremony, and he is the executive director of People of Faith Against the Death Penalty. He has been doing some courageous work for many years to educate many Christians and other members of the clergy, other folks across the country and the world, why we must eliminate the death penalty. And then for dessert, and I'm going to call this for dessert, we managed to get, I just have to sigh for a moment. We managed to get in part 4, the Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowry, who's turning 90 years of age. There will be a big celebration for him for his 90 years of fabulous civil rights, social justice work. We have the man himself, and you know how live radio goes, but we have him. We're going to discuss his life's work. We are, of course, going to talk about the passing of civil rights leader Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth as well, and anything else that this brother wants to talk about, anything else. He is a giant, and we will be honored to get him on the mic. That's the 4 slices of the program for tonight. And as I said at the beginning of the broadcast, let me publicly once again thank Mike Dennis. He has been a huge contributor to this program. Every time he has contributed, he's made our program better. And anything we can do to support his work publicly and privately, I'd like to see us do that. I also want to encourage other producer hosts in the daytime, in the drive time, in the afternoon. Now, he's a busy brother. He might be at a international film series, documentary making expert. He might be doing a lot of different things, but it would be great if others want to tap on his expertise in any of the daytime programs. That would be a blessing because his contributions are huge. Before we start talking about films with Mike, as I like to do, Mike, for some of the newer listeners who may be less familiar with Reelblack, talk about what you're doing and what you've done, and then we'll walk through some of the documentary films and some of the work that you're doing.
Of course. Thanks for having me on again.
My pleasure.
It's good to see you. Welcome. I'm glad you're back on the air, too.
I'm a little grayer now, Mike, but I'm still strong.
And you've come out to support our events. I mean, for people who don't know, who are just finding out about Reelblack, basically I'm a filmmaker based here in Philadelphia, and we have a production company called Reelblack, but we also host movie events here in the city. So right now we're about to kick off our 9th season of hosting movie events. And we have 3 places that we're doing it at. We're doing our big shows at International House, which is at 37th and Chestnut Street. We're doing shows at Media Bureau, which is at 4th and Brown, and we also are bringing back Dinner and a Movie at the Point of Destination Cafe, which is in Mount Airy. And
the Soul Food Cafe, I think, as it's euphemistically called, and I can say the food is superb, and the movies are excellent.
Yeah, shout out to Carol. So those are venues that are designed to premiere new movies, independent films, work that you might not have access to otherwise. The Dinner and Movies tend to be DVD release parties and celebrations like that, new movies on DVD. The bigger venues are Philly premieres of festival favorites, and we're going to try something new at Media Bureau with it's a Reelblack Underground. We're starting off with Ghetto Physics, which is a movie that played earlier this year. But once we get into it, we're going to start digging into my vault of movies that I may or may not be able to track down the rights for, but are really interesting and eclectic, and we'll be showcasing those at as part of our Reelblack Underground series.
It just doesn't get any better. If you want to have a fun, lively, intelligent, relaxed, comfortable environment, all of the work that Mike does definitely should be supported. You don't have to go to New York or L.A. to get great work, great conversation. He has a cadre, a good following of folks, supporters, helpers there, and I encourage you to go to the website and see Mike's work and his. I have to thank you for one more thing, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes and the tofu. He sent me a clip, and maybe he could talk a little bit about it. It is not the first time that his grandmother, do you call her Nana? I should be calling her
Nana.
Miss something. I should call her Miss something or Mrs. something.
Mrs. Helen Dennis.
Thank you, Mrs. Dennis. I should be calling her. You call her Nana. I'll call her Mrs. Dennis. He did, in reference to The Help, when we asked him to create some audio for us, and maybe he'll talk a little bit about that. He did an interview, actually, with his grandmother that was absolutely amazing. Could you just talk a little bit about that, just to say what it was?
Yeah, sure. The week The Help came out, there was, there were a lot of people writing about it. There was a lot of controversy about that film in terms of the fictionalized point of view of the story. So it's the story of black maids in Jackson, Mississippi, but it's told from the point of view of a white writer, would-be writer. So, as good as the movie is, as much as I would love it to get Oscars and Oscar attention for the actors, there's still that skewed perspective, Now, time has proven that it probably was the right thing to do because it made over $100 million at the box office, and I don't know if the movie would have done that same kind of business if it was told strictly from that point of view. But, I used the opportunity to talk to my grandmother, who spent some time as a domestic, throughout her life, and she shared her thoughts and her memories of working for people up north, and it kind of went viral. Somebody picked it up for a scholarly journal, has written about it and collected it along with other writings about The Help, and I think it's got 2,000 or 3,000 views on YouTube right now.
Excellent, and I encourage you to see it. My grandmother, as I mentioned, my late grandmother, and I can't remember the number of years that she's made transition, but she lived to be 90 as well. And they used to call it days work in my hometown, and that's pretty much what she did. And we believe that her knees in later life and back, she had so many problems with them because in those days they literally scrubbed floors. Right. And she told so many stories. So when you listen to Mrs. Dennis's story, and she's just freed up to tell the truth, and hearing her pain, but she's like so strong, about it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I love my grandmother. I mean, because she's always had this sort of attitude about things, and it certainly it's definitely the key reason what has inspired me to sort of believe in myself and do things. So, yeah, I mean, it's on YouTube. If you just type in Nana, N-A-N-A, and Reelblack, it should pop right up, and you can see what we're talking about.
Yeah, a lot of grit, a lot of spirit she has, and just love her. Give her, once she gets warmed up, there about the first minute and a half, because sometimes she may not see the value in these stories because it's her life. And then this is her grandson who she loves, and and then all of a sudden she just starts to cut loose, and it's like amazing. Well, before we get to the break, which we have a minute to do, and hopefully we're going to try to play a clip after the break, but Mike is involved with a number of wonderful activities, one of which is taking a cadre of people to see a brand new documentary film out called Thunder Soul. And I need to tell you, Mike, I looked this up 3 weeks ago and was going to try to have the principals, and I was so happy to see that you're already doing the work. Would you talk about the film Thunder Soul, and then we'll take a break?
Oh, yeah, we could have got Mark on. Mark called me this morning. Mark is so excited that the movie's opening wide around the country, and Thunder Soul is a documentary that actually Jamie Foxx has gotten behind. So you may have seen TV commercials or Jamie Foxx on TV talking about it. It's about a high school band that was championship caliber, like funk band in the 70s, and they hadn't played together in 30 years, and then they decided to do a reunion in honor of Prof. Conrad Johnson, who was the person who was orchestrated all the pieces and all that kind of stuff. So it's sort of if you like movies like Standing in the Shadows of Motown, then you should definitely check this kind of movie out, because it's about legacy. It's got amazing music. I mean, don't listen to the reviews in the weekly. I don't know what planet Matt was on this week, but the music is incredible, and it's proven because there've been 3 or 4 reissues of those records.
Oh, and they play some funk like nobody's business. Funky music. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to see if we're able to play a clip from the movie. We'll see. And if not, we'll discuss some of Mike's other work. So you're listening strong to 900 AM, WURD, your information station, committed to solutions. We'll be right back.
If there's no drummer, there's no timing. Can you hear the drummer?
At a time when everything was changing.
I mean, it was the 70s. It was sexy. It was afros. It was girls.
They were the hottest, baddest band around.
We were called Thunder Soul.
We was the bomb. It was the baddest band in the nation.
And they brought the funk like no one else could.
But they were just good. Not good as in good. Good as in God created the world to be good.
And the cold part about it was they were only in high school. Now,
hey everybody, what's going on?
30 years later, they're getting back together.
This room looks smaller for some reason.
To honor the man that brought them together, Conrad Prof. Johnson.
It was not a standard to have an all-black band led by a black band director.
I had to teach them how to play funk.
He didn't just teach us the music. Taught us how to be men.
Roadside Attractions presents the award-winning new film that is sweeping audiences off their feet.
Really curious to see how are we going to sound.
I have not picked up that horn since 1978.
People are grandparents now, gray hair, 50 pounds larger.
I thought when I took that first blow I was going to pass out.
I thought we were really doing it, but really we sounded terrible.
We rolled like a snowball, man.
And we are back, family. You're listening live to 900 AM WURD, your information station committed to solutions. We have Mike Dennis in studio with us. We just played a little clip to get you excited about this new documentary that Mike described called Thunder Soul. Mike, before we talk about the 2 other films, would you talk about where you're meeting your group tomorrow?
Yeah, it's so important that these movies get supported in theaters and not later on in video. Of course, everybody's going to see the movies when it comes on cable and video and stuff, but I think the idea is that black film deserves to be in multiplexes as much as anything. But if we don't support these movies when we have the opportunity to, there's going to be less and less chances for that. So we actually have 3 trips this month to go see movies in theaters and not on bootleg. The first one is tomorrow afternoon at 12:45 at the Riverview Theater to see Thunder Soul.
Riverview.
The Riverview, I'm sorry.
Delaware Avenue, yeah.
Delaware Avenue, Columbus Avenue, and Reed Streets down there. And then afterwards, we're going to go to the Ruby Buffet, which is right down the street, and do some giveaways. I have some cool gifts of DVDs or whatever. And we'll talk about the movie, take pictures and stuff. And yeah, if you're free, come on down. I'll be wearing a Phillies hat.
Excellent. It's a great film. You'll see a friendly group of people. Mike does great events. If you're a first timer, don't worry about it. It's Riverview, Columbus Boulevard. Some call it Delaware Avenue. Depends on your generation and your age. Easy to find and a great event. So that's tomorrow. Talk a little bit about Make a Movie Like Spike.
Make a Movie Like Spike. That's our Season 9 kickoff event, which is Tuesday night at International House, which is at 37th and Chestnut. And I love this movie. It really shows what we can do if with very little resources. I mean, the movie didn't cost a whole lot to make, and the guys making it are incredibly talented people. It's about two friends who decide to film themselves. One guy's an aspiring filmmaker, and he decides to film himself prior to going off to Afghanistan to fight. And then they actually take cameras into Afghanistan and shoot vignettes and stuff like that. So it's a really cool independent film. It won second place documentary at the Urban World Film Festival last month, and this will be the Philadelphia premiere. And that screening is free. The field trips you have to pay for. You have to pay your own way to the movie. You have to pay your own way to the restaurant or whatever. But Tuesday night, 7:00, International House. That's on me. I'm paying for everybody to get to see this movie for free. We also have Love Lockdown, and we keep the screen open for independent filmmakers from Philly. So a friend of mine, Blue, she has a new movie called My Name is Love. It's like a 5-minute short. We're going to show that as well.
Excellent. And then for the listeners that just joined us, talk about one more time the Ghetto Physics and the launch. Is that the launch of the Soul Food Cafe? Am I getting that right?
No, I mean it's a little tricky. I mean we have so many events this month. I mean actually somebody Black Enterprise come out and said October is Black Movie Month, and they're not lying. There's so many opportunities for us to support our images. It's not funny, and this doesn't even count the film festival, which is coming to town at the end of the month. But Ghetto Physics is happening on October 19th at Media Bureau, which is at 4th and Brown, and that's a DVD release celebration of a movie that E. Raymond Brown did. I don't know if you saw The Secret or What the Bleep Do We Know, the sort of like new agey, inspiring, empowerment type movies. Well, E. Raymond, he made a film with the producer of What the Bleep Do We Know that's designed to empower African Americans and sort of change their way of thinking in terms of understanding the power dynamics that exist in the world. And he uses the game as his paradigm. He says that, like the players or like everybody is either being pimped or hoed in society, to use his terminology, and that the sooner we get hip to the game, the more likely we're able to take advantage of being successful in it.
Excellent, excellent. So you have a lot going on, and mention to the listeners how they can join, how they could connect to you, anything you want them to know about the fees.
All this information is on our website. It's you can Facebook friend me. You can go to our YouTube channel. But the easiest thing to do is go to reelblack.com. That's REELBLACK.com. And I failed to mention, we do have the dinner and movie on the 21st, which is Black Butterfly. It's a movie out of Chicago. It's an independent film by Mark Harris that we're really pleased to be presenting. And that movie, you get to see the movie free if you buy a meal. And those have been successful events at Point of Destination Cafe on Green Street and Upsall Streets for like the last 5 years.
Excellent. I've been to several of them when I can get out. Rave reviews. And again, come on out. Mike, what's your best Facebook address for people to hit you?
Well, if you just type in Facebook Reelblack, it should pop right up.
Excellent. We're going to do a brief musical interlude, invite our next two guests in on our discussion of a phenomenal documentary film. And who better to have my next two guests, which we'll introduce. And Mike, we're going to do a brief interlude. Take a listen. Welcome back, family. Welcome back. 28 minutes. No, make that 27 minutes before the hour. You're listening strong to 900 AM. WURD, your information station committed to solutions. I'm Dr. Richard M. Cooper. The program, we are Word After Dark on a Friday. It's the Karamu, the Feast, and in segment 2, we're going to talk about a phenomenal film that's dropping down from the sky all the way from Sweden. The Black Power Mixtape. In this segment, we're going to have a discussion with two guests that are going to join us. I understand they are on the line. Ms. Latrice Elzy, Dr. L. Picard from the National Black Arts Festival, connecting with us all the way from Hotlanta. Some say Atlanta. Welcome to the program. How are you both?
Doing well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And Ms. Elsley is Director of Artistic Programming, again, at the National Black Arts Festival. I want her, before we dive into this film, to talk about the work of the National Black Arts Festival, just so that our listeners can get their calendars together, particularly for July, get their plane tickets. Describe and talk a little bit about the National Black Arts Festival.
Well, the National Black Arts Festival is an organization that has been in existence for the past 24 years. We're actually going into our 24th year. It is based in Atlanta, Georgia, like you said, and get your calendars ready because the next festival is July 13th through the 22nd for 2012. The festival is unique in that we really explore music and theater, dance, visual arts. I mean, so we explore like really all the disciplines, all the artistic disciplines, as we have this celebration and this exploration of culture and of black culture, not only black culture in the United States, but black culture really around the world. So we're looking at African American culture and African culture and Latin culture that is out of the African diaspora. So that is kind of in a nutshell what we do. So it's an amazing celebration every year. We bring artists in from all over the world. We bring audiences in from all over the world. And the dialogue that we have through art and culture is really quite the amazing thing. And so I have to say that every festival seems to get better and better. At least festival goers leave saying it's the best festival ever. And also the artists. I mean, what artists are able to do, that we present at the National Black Arts Festival, where they get a stage to, like, really tell the story of black people, to tell us their stories through their own lens. And so the work is not co-opted. The work is, it's pure and it's real and authentic, and it's like really through their own lens. And so whether it's music or visual arts or theater or dance, all of it, film, so we are here talking about film tonight. We screen the films of artists from all over the world, and some of the film coming in off the continent is amazing these days, out of Brazil, out of all these different places. And at the National Black Arts Festival every summer, we do screen these with our partners, the Pan-African Film Festival out of Los Angeles.
Well, I have a secret agenda, and I want you to introduce for us in a moment. And I believe, and rescue me if I'm wrong, Dr. Picard is a moderator, a discussion for the film, but I want to get a cadre of folks on the radio to quarterly, every other month, talk about films, one of which is my favorite, Mike Dennis. And so I want to get folks, I want people to know, I want the world to know what you have said, what Mike has said, that African Americans, Africans in the diaspora, we make films, we're in films, and it's amazing, but we have to educate the public to do a better job of supporting the films. Now, let me just ask Dr. Picard, let me just first say, are you with us? And welcome to the program.
I am with you, and I'm glad to be here.
Excellent, excellent. And would you share your role in this upcoming event at the National Black Arts Festival, particularly for the Black Power Mixtape? Are you a moderator, discussant, or just a knowledgeable person about film?
All three. I'm moderating. My official role is to moderate the discussion, but I hope to be able to add something to the discussion. And I certainly am knowledgeable about the subject matter, both from an academic and also from an activist standpoint.
Excellent. And let me ask the two of you before we really flesh out this dialogue. Between the two of you, how were you able to get Kathleen Cleaver, if my notes are correct, to agree to attend?
Well, actually, Kathleen recruited me.
Wow.
I think she was probably the first person on board, and the people who are promoting the film asked her if she could recommend someone to moderate, and she recommended me, and then I recommended Dr. Akinyele Umoja, who is the chairman of the African American Studies program at Georgia State University. And basically, we just kind of pulled it all together based on people we knew and people who we thought could make a constructive contribution.
Wow. I'm wondering, Ms. LZ and Dr. Picard, do you think that Mike and I would make a constructive contribution, and can we pick up some tickets and fly down to your event?
We might have to patch you in by telephone.
Right, or Skype you in. But,
I'm sorry.
Because in the National Black Arts Festival on this particular project, we were probably the last ones in the door on this project. And the reason being is that we just did a film screening last weekend. And so when we were trying to get the Black Power Mixtape for this film series that we did last weekend, because it was a series with 6 different films over the course of the weekend, and we received a call so we reached out to Danny Glover and said, Danny, can we screen the film? And then we found out that it was going to be screened at Emory, but they didn't have because they really contacted Kathleen first. And they needed a partner, like the festival, to partner with this. And so the festival is really, usually we're the first ones in the door and we pull everyone together. This time we were the last ones in the door and, really came to the table as a partner, as like the solid organizational partner for this particular screening.
Yeah, and truth be told, full disclosure, Reelblack was involved with a free screening about a month ago for Black Power Mixtape with the Awesome Film Fest, and Dr. M.K. Asante, Malafi Asante, was on the panel, and guy from the Brothers Network. So they're doing a very good job getting the word out to communities about this film, and hopefully that'll translate to when it opens here in Philadelphia next weekend.
Excellent. Mike, and I'm going to get everybody to join in, but Mike, share a little bit about your perspective on the background of the film, and I'm going to get our other 2 guests to chime in as well.
Sure. For those who aren't aware of the Black Power Mixtape, it's a movie that Danny Glover was one of the co-producers on, and it premiered earlier this year at the Sundance Film Festival, and it's an amazing documentary. It's made entirely of footage that was found in a vault, in the vault of Swedish television, that was all shot during the late 60s and early 70s. So it goes from 1967 to 1975, I believe, and it's in chapters, so it goes 7 chapters each year as a different topic. So there's unseen footage that's never been seen in the United States, of Angela Davis, Eldridge Cleaver, Huey Newton, just the entire gamut of the entire history of the Black Power movement as it existed. Stokely Carmichael, when he was Stokely Carmichael. And, I'm sure anyone listening to this now would just love. It's a treasure trove. It's an amazing film.
Excellent. From your perspective, Dr. Picard, and I've seen the film because of Mike, share from your perspective why this film is so important. And a curiosity question that I have, and I don't know if you can answer it, but I'm going to ask anyway. I'm just wondering why the Swedes, why they were so in tune, why they seemed so non-biased and supportive of the black movement, and they had such great access. But let me first ask you, why is this a significant film from your perspective?
Well, I think it's significant because many of these people, Huey Newton, Stokely Carmichael, Angela Davis, Eldridge Cleaver, they're kind of like images that might exist in the minds of particularly the younger generation. And this film basically humanizes them. You see them in very ordinary circumstances, being real people. And I think that it's going to be very important for the younger generation, just to see that these people were not just icons, but they were ordinary people who had political positions. They had a perspective on the problems that affected black people, and they were human. And I think that's really critically important dimension of this film. I think that it really provides a good sense of how people outside of the United States viewed the political activities that were going on inside of the United States. These were really some folks who had a sense that something important was taking place in the United States and that they had to document this on film. So they came in and they basically went in and interviewed. They followed some of the activities that were going on. They interviewed these folks, and they gave us basically a documentary record that otherwise we would not have had. The Swedish were accused in TV Guide, of all places, of being anti-American because of what they perceived to be the biases of how they covered these Black Power activities. It was really interesting that they have a segment in the documentary where they talk about how TV Guide basically wrote this article saying the Swedish are anti-American, and all they were doing was covering the news of the day.
Yeah, it's funny, and underneath the clip, it said it in those days, TV Guide was the #1 magazine in America. I almost thought that was pathetic.
That is pathetic.
That was sad. We have a clip lined up, and I think we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will get Ms. Elsley's reactions as well. If you just joined us, we're discussing the Black Power Mixtape. It is a phenomenon that's coming across theaters and venues across the country, limited, and we're happy to have our new friends from Atlanta, Mike Dennis, in studio to talk about the film. So let's see if we can play the clip that we have, and then we'll take a break.
When someone asks me about violence, I just find it incredible, because what it means is that the person who's asking that question has absolutely no idea what black people have gone through, what black people have experienced in this country.
In the 1960s and 70s, Swedish filmmakers arrived in America to explore the Black Power movement, which the U.S. media saw as a violent threat.
We're making the revolution by educating the people to the fact that they should arm themselves for self-defense.
If any racist dog policemen attack us, we will defend ourselves because we are bent on surviving.
30 years later, in the cellar of a Swedish television station, an amazing collection of unseen interviews was discovered with some of the greatest revolutionary minds in modern history.
There wouldn't be an America if it wasn't for black people. We hold America to our bosom.
When you get tired enough, it's when you want to sacrifice everything.
Get ridiculed and discriminated and be less than a man.
It's a question of dignity and decency.
My husband didn't make enough money because he was Negro.
We were moved and motivated and charged up by people who had already made a commitment to bring about change.
Fight for liberation, oh yeah!
Dr. King is a great man and he's very patient. Unfortunately, I am from a younger generation. I am not as patient, nor am I as merciful.
Black is beautiful, but black isn't power. Knowledge is power.
In this bankrupt country, there is a point where caution ends and cowardice begins.
The community was flooded with drugs. Hoover and the FBI, they made sure that the drugs were an influence.
Anybody can die nobly for a cause. The sign of maturity is to live day by day for that cause.
We have to document our history. If we're going to tell the story, let's tell the story right.
And family, you're listening strong to 900 AM WURD, your information station committed to solutions. I'm Dr. Richard M. Cooper. The program is called The Caribou, The Feast. It's about 11 minutes before the hour. We are honored to have in studio Mike Dennis of Reelblack.com, and on the line Dr. Earl Picard and Ms. Leslie Elsley, Director of the Artistic Programming and NBAF Digital. And now let me ask you, Ms. Elsley, from your perspective, why did you feel that it was important to get this film, to show it to the audiences in Atlanta?
Well, you know, when we look at film for the festival period, there's a lot of criteria that we look at as far as how we determine what is screened at the festival and, you know, what kind of stories we're telling about black people. And the important thing for me for this film, because, you know, this film covers 1967 to 1975, like Mike said earlier. I was born in 1967.
You're a baby. You're young.
Yeah, I was born in 67. And so when we look at films like this, I mean, when I think about what I know about the civil rights movement, what I know about the Black Power movement, what I know about, you know, the history of black people in this country, you know, up to a point where I was, you know, of a level of consciousness to be experiencing it myself, it is really from digital archives. I mean, so it's from, you know, Eyes on the Prize. It's from what my parents told me, because I'm the child of an activist, you know, who was a part of SNCC and, you know, who did sit in at lunch counters and what have you. So I am the daughter of those people. So I knew a lot from what my parents taught me, but it's really through these digital archives. So when you think about movies like this movie and documentaries like this that over the years, continue to tell our stories and to continue to tell our truth. And I think the Black Power mixtape is so amazing because it is unfiltered. So it's kind of that unedited, very, very raw, hearing the truth from these people so that, you know, when you look back at media clips, for example, of that time, I mean, you know, it marginalized the movement that they were engaged in. And so a film like Black Power Mixtape, it really kind of pushes to the front the truth that they were engaged in. And it gets away, it knocks out those cobwebs of, you know, people being marginalized, people being criminalized even, you know, because it was seen through a certain lens. And now we're able to, like, really hear those voices, understand exactly where they were, without it being filtered through the lens of someone who did not necessarily agree with it, did not necessarily like it, but reported it because it was something that was happening in real time. So I think that this is exactly the type of film that the National Black Arts Festival, you know, would screen, because we are constantly about how do we tell our truth and how do we tell our stories with, you know, through the voices of these artists, through the voices of people that are scholars, people that lived through particular, you know, incidents in time, you know, in time. So this is exactly the type of film that we would get excited about. And we are very, very excited about it and feel like we're going to have a full house this week. And also it'll be a nice, you know, push because the film will be in theaters here in Atlanta. And so this weekend, next week will be a nice push to send people to the theater to see it.
Excellent. I loved your answer, and in part, I was making light of your age. I have you at least by a decade, and the point that I wanted to make, and I love what you said about seriously when you were born. I have seen 2 or 3 generations of young people, at least, who do not have a frame of reference. We just played a clip, and we just cannot assume that people recognize the voices of anyone. And they might recognize Erykah Badu, maybe, or Brother Talib Kweli. But, you know, a lot of the seminal voices, you're probably going to recognize if they heard it. I don't think we had it in the clip. A younger Minister Louis Farrakhan, because the cadence and everything is still there with him. I'm not sure that our listeners would, but other listeners would recognize our own Professor Sonia Sanchez, who does some of the narration. And I think you make a beautiful point about how much of this gets lost. And I guess I want to say to the panel and get people to dive in. You see, part of I'm hopeful to ignite. I'm probably going to get in trouble. A better form of cultural radicalism that meant do for self, help the people, work together, that I think was a significant aspect of the movement era. It didn't mean we always got along. And I guess I'm looking for something more organic to help the young people to see, and I don't mean to hate on hip-hop because I'm a fan of certain types of hip-hop music, but to see that what you think is revolutionary, it ain't. If you go to jail for being drunk or fighting somebody or arguing with your homie, you know, that doesn't warrant me standing out protesting your release. When you look at these folks who put their life on the line, it's a whole different kind of movement. Mike, I'm looking into your eyes. Let me get your reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen this movie a few times. The first time I saw it, I felt an incredible amount of pride. Well, the first reaction was, why is this information being hidden from us? You know, I felt the same way when I saw a movie called Soul Power. It's like this incredible footage, and this film is beautiful, by the way. It's not scratchy by any stretch. I mean, the cinematography is amazing, and I just felt an incredible sense of pride to be connected in some way to these people, to an overall sense of blackness being celebrated, and just, again, a connectedness to a movement. The movie kind of ends in a bleak manner. It starts off very optimistically with Stokely Carmichael visiting overseas, and the last chapter is Harlem, 1975, and they're talking about the heroin epidemic. You know, so in some ways it's talking about how this movement was destroyed in a way. But then the voices come through, and Sister Sonia's there, and Talib Kweli and Erykah Badu, and so there still is a connectedness to it. Now, maybe it's not the same fashionable movement that it was when everyone had afros, let's say, but it still exists. And you know, again, this is the kind of movie you should take your kids to. and own, have it in your collection once it comes out.
Absolutely. Hoover saying one of the most dangerous programs in America was the lunch program by the Black Panther. Are you serious? Dr. Picard, let you get in there.
Okay, I just want to say that the fact that they opted to use the reactions of some members from the younger generation was really a stroke of genius as far as I'm concerned. But at the same time, I'm kind of I have a couple of decades on folks, so this was actually the period that I actually lived through and participated in. So it was footage that was drawn from one source, and it was not comprehensive. And I think that needs to be pointed out. For someone to see this movie, it should whet their appetite as opposed to satisfying their need for information, because there are a lot of gaps there. There are organizations like the Republic of New Africa, the Black Workers Congress, that were also active during this period that, they just didn't basically make it on film. This Black student movement, the Black student movement at historically black institutions during that period was very, very seminal. We had the South Carolina State massacre, basically, at Orangeburg, South Carolina. At Jackson State University, students were killed by National Guards for basically demanding that their blackness be recognized by the educational system. I was involved personally in the student uprising at Southern University in 1972, where 2 students were killed by state troopers. So there was a chapter on black student activism in the Black Power movement that basically we just don't see anything about in the documentary, or organizations that we don't see anything about. So this should be basically a jumping off point for people whose appetites are whetted about the Black Power movement, as opposed to their their absolute information source on that, because there are a lot of things that just didn't get covered because basically these folks were coming and going. They weren't here full-time, 24/7, with crews all over the country following things as they were going on. They were basically getting snatches of information about what was going on in the Black Power movement. So anybody who really is seriously moved by this movie needs to go out and get some more information.
But I completely agree with that. It's not going to supplant the need for a larger history that's more comprehensive. But I think the movie is worth the price of admission alone. I don't know if you agree. The segment with Angela Davis being interviewed in prison, it brought tears to my eyes. It brought tears to my eyes. And as someone a little bit younger, I'll full disclosure, born in '69. I still feel connected to this in a way that maybe somebody born in '89 might not. I don't know if I necessarily ever had an opportunity to see and hear these heroes speak for any long periods of time. My generation, it's almost like the Black Power movement was a failure. So just to be exposed to this and have it connect into my cultural wavelength was just an incredible experience. I hope more people have the opportunity to share in that when the movie does come out next Friday at the Ritz Bourse.
Excellent. Let me go ahead.
Can I break in for one moment?
Sure.
Mike said something really interesting though about our generation, because you and I share a generation, and about the Black Power movement seemingly being a failure. But I have to tell you, when I travel around the world and I deal with people of color in Europe and Africa and all these different places, I always walk away thinking that they need a civil rights movement and a Black Power movement. Because of the Black Power movement, we are who we are. And so I don't necessarily know that it seems like a failure, in the minds of people. Well, I'm not exactly sure that I agree with that.
I'm sure lots of people are not going to agree with that statement, but I think that we're more capitalist than we are socialist now in this day and age.
I hate to jump in. I have to jump in because we're moving to another segment, but let me say this about what both of you said. This is what I want to happen in audiences. I want the dialogue. I want it to be intergenerational, regional, local, national. That's why we have Mike Dennis in studio, I think from the north. I know I'm from the north of a certain generation. And that's why we had our two guests who we were honored to have. We would welcome you back, Dr. Earl Picard, Ms. Latrice Elzie of the National Black Arts Festival. We encourage our listeners just to go online, get more information, follow what they do, and I promise you that we will have them back. I want to thank you so much for your contributions to the program. Keep doing the good work, fight the good fight, and we'd love to have you back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care. We're going to take a pause for the cause, family, and we'll be back on the other side of 8 o'clock. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to 900 AM WURD. We will be right back.